initiated in Indian magic by a Polish priest. 1. My background. My name is Mr. Mbula. I was born in Zaire, on 1st of January 1955, in the sub-region of Chopo, the region of Upper Congo, in a Protestant Baptist Christian family. Like the majority of the inhabitants of my sub-region, my father was a fisherman. It was therefore thanks to the sale of fishery products that my father supported the expenses of the family and my education. I did not practice magic by adventure, but rather by necessity. The circumstances of life, and especially the poverty of my parents, have been for much in this conduct. I arrived in Kisangani in 1973 and over there I lived with my cousin. The latter managed to get along well for her family. My brother-in-law was unemployed, and my presence in her house upset her. I quickly realized that my brother-in-law did not want me any more at home. As for you, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, practice hospitality. Romans 12 verse 13. I asked God to help me, but all my prayers remained a dead letter. I had come to doubt the existence of God. I said to myself, my father is a Christian and he prays every day. Every Sunday he attends worship and gives his offering if he has the opportunity. Yet he is still poor. I am very poor, suffering, hungry, and very dirty. What evil have we committed so that heaven may punish us this way? The merciful God that my father used to talk to me about with admiration, does he exist? If so, why does he allow me to go through such trials? In the face of all these unanswered questions, I had come to the conclusion that God did not exist, and that it was the priests and the pastors who created him in order to harm the naive. The reality was clear: God did not exist. Such was my reasoning. One day, my professor of systematic botany invited me to his house. Along the way, he tells me that he heard his colleagues complain about me. Then he proposed to me to live with him. I welcomed this good news with great joy. I immediately moved from my cousin to my new home. In my teacher place, my social condition improved. I recovered my health and devoted most of my time to my studies. 2. My initiation into magic. One evening as I was revising my classes, my professor entered my room and said to me, I think you are well here and your studies are going well, but one thing is certain, if you continue in life at this pace without any protection you will not be long in the fire. You will be able to finish your studies and work, but you will always remain poor and unhappy. I see how you sacrifice yourself to help yours. That's good and I approve. That's one of the reasons I'm coming to help you. I have thought of your future. I ask you one thing, be patient and courageous, for I will give you a power. 4 days later my teacher brought me a catalogue. He told me to read it quietly and attentively. I had to choose among the different subjects presented in this catalogue the one that I find interesting. The catalogue in question dealt with topics of everyday life and prayers of magic incantations. It was all about magic, especially of the applications of magic phenomena to the various fields of everyday life. Since I was a student I chose subjects that related to my occupations, so I chose the magic pen, the Egyptian pill and the magic handkerchief. Beside each of this subject, there was a legend which presented the usefulness and the method of use of each article. Later the professor brought me the magic pen, the handkerchief as well as the Egyptian pill. He said to me that the magic pen has the power to write on its own. Just put it between the sheets in an exam and it will write the correct answers on his own. You will just pretend to write, or to scribble anything on the page. The corrector will see only the right answers. This handkerchief of dominion will serve to impose your will on others. I swallowed the Egyptian pill to stimulate my memory. The professor sat down and looked at me gravely. One would have said that a father who wanted to entrust his son with a task which he knew would be painful beforehand. Then he said to me, for 2 years you'll only have to eat raw food. From this date it was no longer possible for me to eat cooked food. I ate only fruits, raw eggs, and certain roots like tubers, carrots, cassava, sweet potatoes, etc. I could get these foods easily because I lived with the teacher. After 2 years I resumed a normal diet. I cannot go on with this testimony without telling you that the Polish professor in question was a priest of the Roman Catholic Church. My astonishment was to see a Catholic priest initiate me to Indian magic. The attitude of this priest confirmed in me the idea that God did not really exist. Indeed, if God existed, it was the priests who were most likely to know him better because of their privileged position. According to the Catechism of the Roman Catholic Church, the role of priests is to serve as intermediaries between God and the faithful. Despite the fact that this priest celebrated Mass every day, he knew the truth, and this truth was that God did not exist. That is why he revealed to me the path by excellence that is magic. That was my reasoning at that time. A year after the professor had forbidden me to eat cooked foods, I found a great transformation in my being. I had become very intelligent. I could read in the thoughts of my interlocutors. I could know their identity, their date of birth and their address, without them telling me. All the courses seemed to me to be simple revisions. During the 4 years spent in higher education, I distinguished myself. When the 2 years of observance of the diet imposed by the professor were accomplished, he promised to do some serious things with me. He brought me a new catalogue entitled Atlas of Good Luck in All Things. This time without consulting my point of view, he pointed out a subject in the catalogue and said, "I give you the great divine force of Great Dashanti." With a pair of scissors, he cut a lock of my hair and put it in a flask. Then he drew a little dust under my right heel and wrapped it in white paper. He explained to me, "These things thus taken from your body will serve to keep you in difficult moments." He added, "This divine power has the power to protect you from bullets, snake bites, wizards, death from drowning, fire, asphyxiation or accident. It also gives you protection from any visible enemy or invisible, in short against all danger and all evil." The professor drew a ring from his pocket, gave it to me and said, "This talisman will give you the strength to fight 21 people and to defeat them. You will be able to overcome the physical laws of nature according to your will. Weightlessness, altitude, space and time." Endowed with all these powers and protections, I resolved to experiment them. It was not that I doubted the veracity of the professor's words, but I wanted to test my power first and then prove to myself that I was important. It is in view of these things that I voluntarily put poison into my food. When I brought my hand to the jar which contained the poisoned food, it broke itself into several pieces, even before my hand touched it. One day some friends tried to poison me. They placed a layer of powdered of sulfuric acid on the plate reserved for me and invited me to dinner. I knew in advance that my plate was poisoned, but if I had refused to eat they would have suspected something, or that a traitor among them had informed me of their infamy. Then, to convince my friends of my superiority over them, I had to eat this poisoned dish in front of everyone, but my plate fell when my fork touched the food, reversing its contents. Later my friends apologized and confessed to me their act. They told me that their bad conduct towards me had been dictated to them by my boasting and my pride towards them. What they said was true. I wanted them to know that I was no longer an ordinary man. My aim was attained, for from this incident my friends rectified their position towards me. They considered me a Superman protected by invisible beings. I was invulnerable. With my magic handkerchief I could break their will and force them to do what I wanted them to do. One day I quarreled with a soldier, a commando, only to advertise myself. This commando was known for its wickedness in the region. When he learned about my love with his concubine, he beat her violently. The poor woman did not understand what was happening to her. She spent the money on this commando for my own benefit. This woman loved her lover, but because she was under the spell, she could not act against my will. The commando had become the laughingstock of the entire population of Kasangani. The commando decided to kill me to restore his dignity. After several days the commando crossed me in an uninhabited place. It was evening and a little dark. In reality it was I who had organized this fortuitous meeting. Because this situation had lasted too long, I had to put an end to it. The commando approached me without saying a word. He pulled a revolver out of one of his trouser pockets, and shot 3 times in my direction at point-blank range. The echo of the shots reverberated in the trees. I felt like a tickle. This was the impact of bullets on the skin of my chest and my belly. I scratched my skin where I felt the tickling, and I found myself with the 3 balls in my hand. In a sublime gesture I handed them to the commando. telling him to shoot again if he wanted to. This act had taken place with such a rapidity that his brain did not have time to record this information. The soldier remained dumbfounded, not understanding what was happening to him. I quickly realized that he did not want to shoot at all. In fact, he lost his mind and had become like a madman. In fact, he had gone mad. What pride was mine, when I discovered that even bullets fired at point blanks did not injure me. The impossible no longer existed for me. I could fly in the air like a bird, I could go through a door or through a wall, I could make myself invisible if I wanted to, etc. I realized that if God existed, I had to even being God, or that I was not far from being. I had nothing in perspective, but I was feared and respected as I wanted. Nothing and no one could worry me. 3. The search of mystical money. Few weeks later I joined the Polish priest to ask him how to get money magically. He replied, "There are many ways to get money. I do not want to initiate you to all these methods at once, but we will study them gradually. The first method is called smart theft. This method involves ordering wandering spirits to bring you money. You can specify the location, quantity, time and nature of the money. When it appears, it will be accompanied by a number. This number indicates the time you have to spend it. This money is stolen from stores or banks by wandering spirits. Here are the conditions relating to smart theft. With this money, you will not be able to buy any durable goods. At the agreed time, all the money will have to be spent. Apart from these two conditions, you can make this money whatever you want. Here is the punishment reserved for those who do not respect requirements. Either they die or they become crazy. We call this method smart theft because the theft will not be discovered. The money will be put back in its place before the owner realizes his disappearance. You do not have to buy durable items because everything has to disappear by the end of the deadline. So if you keep that money, you risk dying. After buying an unsustainable item, if the money you give to the seller is put together with ordinary money, that money will disappear at the same time as the ordinary money. I decided to go and find the teacher so that he could give me another possibility of getting money. Before revealing this possibility, the professor advised me, "You are still too young to understand the problem of money. Make your request to this address and wait to know their answer." He gave me an address in India. I hastily drafted my request for money. Spirits are then used to carry mail. This method is known for its speed. A delay of 5 minutes is rare when this means is used. Usable post boxes can be toilets, beds, buffet, tables, cabinets, etc. 5 minutes later, I received the reply. The letter was written, signed and sealed in red ink. I took it to the professor after reading it. The latter, without even glancing at it, said to me, "It's as I told you, my son, in this world there is nothing for nothing." The professor's reply and that of the letter implied that in order to receive the money that I needed, I had to sacrifice a human life. I replied to the professor, who was a Polish priest, that I had nobody to sacrifice for money. I preferred to die as poor as my father, rather than being rich and responsible for a human life sacrificed in order to satisfy certain passing needs. To kill a person? I could not believe it. My emotion got the priest to laugh. He suggested a third possibility of obtaining money. He said to me, "I accept that you still have reluctance to sacrifice a human life. I understand you because of your age. I know that when the need arises your reluctance will disappear. Meanwhile, I inform you that there is a third possibility which is widespread among magicians. If you like, I'll give you 2 seals. The first seal will make you be loved by women. No woman in the world can resist your call even if you were ugly. She will come and you will do with her what you will. The second seal has the power to have a woman conceived after you slept with her even if she is barren. Do not forget that if you unite with a woman you form one body with her, so instead of sacrificing yourself, you can sacrifice your own flesh, which is your wife, or your own blood that flows in the veins of your children. Every time you sleep with any woman you can write her name and give her a large sum of money as a gift. The name thus will be recorded on a list in the invisible world. Later, if the need arises in R, you will only have to delete a name from this list and she will died. In reality, this person does not die absolutely, because after what is called death, her soul will work for you in search of new sums of money to surrender. If it does not help you to sleep with any woman, you can take offices, that is, a second or third woman. The children born of these unions will be included on the list. When the need arises at headquarters in the invisible world, you will erase a name from this list and the child will die. You will be given a large sum of money as a reward, so that the ceremonies of mourning will be done with pomp. No one will think of suspecting the loss of the child, not even the mother in any case. For those around you, all the tears shed and all the money spent will prove the attachment and affection you felt for the deceased. Strangely enough, this whole theory did not interest me at all. The idea of sacrificing a human life to enjoy money was very repugnant to me, so I accepted my fate. I resigned myself to my condition. This resignation continued without disturbing the professor with my problems of money, but many days later I went to the professor. I asked him if he could find a way to get money without human sacrifice and the money that would not disappear. The professor shrugged his shoulders, as if to express resignation. Then he said, "Then you need a woman." I did not understand what he meant. The professor returned to see me 3 days after our conversation. He said to me, "I told you about a woman as a solution to your problem. You know that the woman satisfies almost all the needs of man. In other words, it is towards the woman that all the needs of man are directed besides the personal bodily needs and, okay, we have traveled to the land of the goddess Maharashanthi, the queen of Indian Ocean. This is where we will find a woman who can solve your problems. But before going there, it is necessary to impose a certain bodily and psychic discipline on us. Indeed, all our protections and our powers have no effect in her universe. This discipline consists of fasting while reciting certain incantatory prayers in a specific order for a period of 5 days. This treatment of our body aims to harden our hearts against the temptation of the goddess, because she has many traps in her world. If someone succumbs to one of her temptations or if someone pleases her, it's hard for her to let the person come back to earth, and that means death on earth, although the person will continue life in her universe. You see that it is easier to enter the land of the goddess Maharashanthi than to get out of it, because the majority of its population is female. The goddess let go her male guests with difficulty to return to their country on the earth. To my knowledge, here are some of his traps: fear, astonishment, panic, etc. We must abstain from one of the sentiments I have just quoted. I know we cannot do it on our own. That is why we must observe this 5-day fast to implore the clemency of the goddess and to master our will. Brothers and sisters in Christ, you see how not to be seduced by demons I had to fast for 5 days, in order to achieve demonic goals. How much more we who are children of God, should we pray and fast to resist the lusts of the world. In the capital of the Upper Congo region there is a river called Chopo, a tributary of the Zaire River. A hydroelectric dam was erected there, before its confluence with the river Congo, forming a waterfall called Force of the East in Kisangani. It is a strategic location for the economy of the Upper Zaire region. Due to the power produced by the hydroelectric dam, the soldiers guard it 24 hours a day. It was at this place called the Force of the East that I and the Polish priest went after 5 days of fasting and prayer. We were there in the night about 1 in the morning. It was dark and a fresh breeze swept our faces. Only the sounds of insects at the edge of the water disturbed the silence of the night. The water was still flowing. We approached in silence the waterfall. 5 green beret soldiers mounted guard, gun in hand. All the soldiers fell asleep after the priest had uttered some conjuring of magical hypnosis. The wind stopped blowing and the insects stopped singing. Then a huge and great serpent springs from the water. This serpent had 7 heads. A kind of light emanated from each head, illuminating the surface of the water and its surroundings. The trunk of the serpent measured 1.80 meters in diameter. Under other circumstances the appearance of such a snake might well have frightened me, but at that moment it left me cold. All these events and those that followed provoked no reaction in me. Everything seemed normal to me. Then a woman appeared below the serpent, a woman of rare beauty, of the Indian type. She presented herself. "I am the goddess Maharashanthi of India to serve you." The timbre of her voice expressed excessive femininity. Then the priest said, "We come to you, goddess Maharashanthi, to visit you and ask for help that you alone in any universe can provide us. "You are my guests," said the goddess, "so be welcome in my universe. Follow me please." When she asked us to follow her, she turned to show us the way to her world. I saw an extraordinary event passed before my eyes. The water, the serpent and the darkness disappeared to make room for an unreal and fairy world. For the first time in my life my eyes discovered a world different from that in which I was born and lived until then. There was a light that did not come from either the sun or the moon. The color at the firmament was violet. I did not notice any vegetable life. In place of the ground there was a substance comparable to tar mixed with cement. The whole ground was covered with glass. I have never visited American or European cities, but I imagine that such a city cannot exist on Earth. We were the hosts of the goddess. She made us visit her universe. Almost the entire population consisted of women. My impression was that all these women were alike. They are all of equal beauty. Nothing disturbed the calm, serenity, and peace of this mysterious world. The population was kind, welcoming and hospitable. When the visit was finished, we went to the residence of the goddess. After a few minutes of rest, the goddess invited us to the banquet offered in our honor. There were many guests at the banquet, among them the queen, the princesses, and the duchesses. During the banquet, the professor wanted to explain the motive of our visit, but the goddess prevented it, saying that we would have time to talk about it later. After the meal, the teacher and the goddess withdrew to another apartment in the residence. The queen, as well as other guests, kept me company in the professor's absence. I was already tormented by the prolonged absence of the goddess and the professor, when I saw them leave the room where they had retired. The professor made me understand by a nod that everything had gone well. So we had to come back. I took leave of my guests, then, accompanied by the goddess, we set off again towards the place by which we had entered. During the journey the goddess held my hand familiarly. We arrived at our point of departure. Something happened. The occult universe disappeared to make way for the river and the serpent with 7 heads. The goddess was with us and always held me by the hand. Like old friends, she said goodbye and let go of my hand. She turned and disappeared from our sight. The lights that came from the 7 heads of the giant serpent as well as the serpent itself, also disappeared into the water leaving us in great darkness. Around us life had resumed. The soldiers were still asleep under hypnosis. We had to go quickly lest people see us and ask us about our presence in such a place at 4 in the morning. Back in the city everyone went to sleep to recover the sleep lost during this remarkable journey. In the afternoon of the same day, the priest came to me and explained to me this. When I got out with the goddess I explained your problem. She confided to me that there was within you a force that attracted her exceedingly towards you. She thought I was bringing a follower and insisted that you stay some time there. I told him the reason for our visit. She was very attached to you to such a point that she proposed to come personally to serve you. I refused, for if I had accepted she would have come and persuaded you one day to follow her into her universe. You would have done it, for she is much more powerful than you. I entreated her to lose interest in you. She refused categorically, but, given my insistence, she finally accepted. But on the other hand she has set difficult conditions which you must observe if you want to have a woman who can solve your money problems and fulfill all your desires. Be careful, my son. You are free to refuse if these conditions prove to be beyond your means, but know that if you refuse you can also say goodbye to your plans for money. Here's what you need to do if you want to continue. Tonight you'll find a pack of 17 cards at your bedside. Each card presents the photo of a woman. Among these 17 photos you will choose the one that you like the most. It is this woman who will become your wife. The professor then explained to me how to prepare the visit which these 17 women. You will be awakened at midnight by the 17 women on the cards, but be careful not to make your choice this evening. They will come to seduce you in different ways to make you succumb. If you succeed in resisting until 4 o'clock, at the hour of their departure you will know your wife, for she will not go with the others. This is the one you chose on the cards. Beware of my son, if you succumb to the charm of one of them that is not the one you had chosen. She will take you to the universe of the goddess Marishati forever. In other words, you will die in our world but you will continue to live in the land of the goddess. This is one of the conditions imposed by the goddess. Then, In order not to run the risk of deceiving you, you must resist until all other people leave. I told myself that if I refused these conditions, the Polish priest would not be satisfied with me, therefore he would never give me any other method of obtaining the money I needed, so I agreed. As the priest told me, in the evening, around 7:30 p.m., I found a packet of cards under my pillow. Each card represented a beautiful woman dressed in light and transparent clothes. I took some time to contemplate the physiognomies of these unreal beings. It was the perfection of beauty. Then came the critical hour when I had to make my choice, to choose the one that would forever be my wife. I had no point on which to support my reasoning, for all were of equal beautiful. After a good moment of indecision I came up with a decision. At midnight I felt that someone was touching me to wake me up gently. I opened one eye for I was still sleepy. I discovered that a woman was trying to wake me up, without brutality, with kisses and caresses. I read in each of her movements a deep tenderness and love. I got up and walked towards the living room. There I was greeted by the applause of my visitors. I noticed that all the women presented on the cards were very real and very beautiful. For several hours they all endeavored to seduce me by all possible means worthy of the children of perdition, but the priest had been strict on this point, not to sleep with any of them before the departure of the other 16, because I could no longer recognize the one I had chosen, and I could not risk my life by sleeping with one of them at random. Seeing that I did not succumb to their advances, the women used all the resources of their devilish seduction. Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, I acknowledge that without the discipline of hardening to which I submitted during the 5 days, I should have succumbed to the assault of the provocations of these 17 women. At 4 o'clock they said goodbye to me and left as they had come, that is to say crossing the walls, but one of them remained, so it was my wife, the one on whom I have chosen. She embraced me for a long time. Having placed herself beside me, she said to me, "My love, I am pleased with your conduct just now, with regard to my cousins. It is for me a sign of love and fidelity that you abstained from knowing at least one of them. I, too, will love you as long as you respect my demands, which are only those of a woman who loves you and wants to make your happiness. Out of the food prepared by thy hand, thou shalt eat only the food that I offer thee, and not that of a woman. When you go home, you must not delay more than 2 hours. When you go out, when you come back, you'll first have to take a shower and change yourself before approaching me. In the house, never wear leather shoes. Outside of both of us no one should know my presence in your place. If someone inadvertently saw me without you being aware of it, that person would die or go mad. But if the person was informed by you, then it is you who will lose life or reason. As you see, I am very jealous. On the other hand, I accept to fulfill all your desires before you. Just tell me whatever your desires, I will fill them. My name is Helene Maglu, but call me Helene." My wife Helene had a body different from ours. She did not seem to have any bones and her body seems like a balloon. When I pressed against her body, but the side that immediately displeased me in her was her sexual greed. I was so exhausted by our relations in this field that I often lost consciousness. She had to revive me by washing my face with a sponge soaked in water, or by giving me small patches on the cheeks. In short, the conception of love was very different between Helen and me. I told myself that one day I would end up losing my life, for only my fainting could free me from this serpent embrace. At the beginning of our union, I told myself that she would eventually get tired or I would get used to it, but nothing I had thought of was realized. On the contrary, Helene became more and more possessive and aggressive. Little by little the joy I had felt for her benefits faded, and love gave way to hatred. I looked for a way or an opportunity to get rid of her, but I did not have the courage because of all the benefits she gave me. However, my mind was made up, and I awaited the propitious opportunity to put an end to this. Many days passed. One day, at the end of classes, I saw a very beautiful girl among them. I took time to admire her. I coveted her. I was so immersed in my thoughts that I had not noticed the time pass. I was late to go home. After I had taken off my shoes on the threshold of the house, I went to take my shower and change clothes. After the shower, I left to explain my delay to Helen. But in the place where Helene usually awaited me, I found the beautiful student. I was seized with fear when I saw this girl in Helen's room. I was afraid of dying or going mad. I wondered how she knew I had coveted her. How did she know my address? How did she come in? Had Helene seen her? Without paying attention to her, I ran into all the rooms in search of my wife, shouting that I had nothing to do with the presence of this girl in the house. From where she sat, the beautiful student smiled at my confusion. She approached me and said, "Don't you recognize me, darling? I'm not the girl you saw when you left your class. I'm your wife Helene Magalou. I put on the body of the one you saw today. Here are the answers to the questions you asked yourself during the day about her. She is not a ghost, but she will soon become one. Here is her identity, honey. I do not give you this information for you to go and look for her, but to show you that by doing so you distress me, for I love you to death, and it is impossible for me to lose you. Besides, what would I become without you? How can I think of sharing your love with another, as long as you cannot satisfy me? Do not be angry with me for the same conduct. Understand me, dear, I am here for you." She gave me the full identity of the beautiful student while weeping. She gave the name, address, age. 2 days after this interview I learned about the death by drowning of the beautiful student. This death affected me deeply. My conscience reproached me for his death, yet I had only just looked at her and admired her. She was innocent. As for me, no doubt was no longer allowed. I was sure that it was Helene who had killed her out of jealousy for me. For my part, I was horrified, for she was responsible for the death of the beautiful student. As time passed, Helene became more and more morose, anxious, and sometimes dreamy. One evening, after considering me attentively, she said to me, "My love, I feel a deep feeling for you. My love for you is growing. I would like to give back to your family a lot of goods, including 6 vehicles, 3 trucks and 3 cars. I will buy for your family 3 stores in the city center, and 2 residences in the best areas of the city. These goods I give to your family as a dowry, then I will take you and we will go to live in my country forever, in the land of the goddess Marishanti." Suddenly I understood what was tormenting my wife. She had had enough of me and wanted my death. It was the long-awaited opportunity to get rid of her. But we were not there yet. For the time being, I had to find the words to politely refuse her offer. I say to Helen in order not to upset her, I said, "I know your country for having already been there once. There is calm and silence, respect for the human personality, and the gentleness of the goddess are legendary. But as for going there to not see the members of my family again, I do not agree." Despite Helen's insistence, my no was categorical. I had to put an end to this situation because I risked losing my life by continuing to live with her. Our union lasted 14 months. The professor was astonished when I informed him of my intention to separate myself from Helen. I explained to her in detail Helene's sexual dissatisfaction, the death of the beautiful student, as well as her intention of taking me to her universe forever. In short, I invoked the incompatibility of moods. The priest did not hide the difficulty of such an approach, especially since he did not remember a case of separation. Usually those who were married to such women agreed to accompany their wives freely to the land of the goddess. Then he said to me, "Since you are the first to attempt such a thing, I will try to ask the goddess a favor, but I tell you beforehand that it will not be easy." A journey into the universe of the goddess was therefore envisaged. The pact, we returned to the waterfall of Chopo, and the same scenario as the first time occurred. The priest hypnotized the soldiers. He invoked the manifestation of the goddess Marishanti. Spurt of the serpent with 7 heads happened, and then the appearance of the goddess. She knew the motive of our visit and summoned Helene to give her opinion. Helene appeared and declared that she was disappointed and humiliated that her husband was abandoning her, when she intended to pay her dowry to her in-laws, but she recovered herself shortly afterwards, and declared, "You must know that it was not I who abandoned my husband, but rather it is he who abandons me. Since he is the one who abandons me, I demand that he live with me here in our universe, otherwise he has to give me his little brother in their household to live with me here." From the place where I was, I answered the professor, "None of the requirements of Helen is possible. It has never been said in our conventions that I shall never be able to separate from her. or that some members of my family may die for my sake, I am willing to accept all your requirements, provided I can see my parents when I want and where I want to. Let none of my family die because of me." Then the professor and the goddess retired to a nearby room. After a moment they returned to the room where we were all. As for making a public verdict, the goddess said to the professor, "Considering the services you have rendered, we grant you this favor, dear professor. However, we are telling you that this is the first time we have been in such a situation. We hope that this will be the last. In our common interest," she turned to my direction and said, "it is because you are ready to execute our demands that you have your life saved. In reality, Helene had the mission of bringing you in our universe forever, but the poor woman loved you so much that she could not act against your will. From now on you will work for us until you die. You will return to your universe with your teacher, the priest. He will instruct you on your new duties. At the end of this meeting you will sign with your blood the contract that will bind you to us until the end of your days. It will be a pact. From now on, you will be a servant of the goddess Maharashathi. I confirm you to the rank of graduate for the whole zone eastern of Congo. You are not a novice to tell you what would happen to you if you want to betray us." The papers were brought, and with my blood I signed the contract of my fingerprints. At 4 o'clock we returned home the first time. For a few months day after day the professor taught me my new duties. During the day, I attended theoretical classes, and at midnight we went to the cemetery to complete my training, to restore and amuse myself. Indeed, since the moment I signed the pact, I had been entitled to the consideration due to my graduate's rank. Among other things, I had the right to occupy a place in the restaurant of the cemetery every night. The professor brought me other catalogs in order to document me further. My new occupation consisted in tying the talismans. These talismans were sent to us by customers, who sent them to us to put a power there. Most orders came from different countries in Europe, including France, Romania, Poland, and especially Italy. In Africa, we received orders from Cameroon, Gabon, Mauritania, Senegal and Zaire. For Zaire, we had the cities of Kisangani and Kinshasa. With the help of the teacher, I had opened a house identical to the one that exists in Kinshasa, called House Lion Gilbert. Ours was named White House Fair Kisangani.